Hello, I'm Chris from TechSpert, and this past week I've been getting to know Huawei's fresh new Matebook X Pro 2024. It's an unfeasibly light and compact laptop that basically whips out its danglies and gyrates them in the general direction of the Macbook Air, screaming, "Hey, what you reckon, eh?" Of course, just like the MacBook Air, the Matebook X Pro 2024 ain't exactly cheap. It'll drain your savings by approximately £2,000. So, is it worth that cash? Well, here's my in-depth review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, the most striking thing clearly about the Matebook X Pro 2024 is just how stupidly dinky it is. It's been redesigned in pretty much every single area, right down to the bloody hinges, to make it as light as possible, and the result is a laptop that weighs under a kilo. So it's considerably lighter than that MacBook Air 13, despite the fact it sports a bigger display. And it's not actually until you have it in your hands that you can really truly appreciate just how ridiculously good Huawei's design is. At its chunkiest point, it's around 13 mils, and honestly, this thing slides effortlessly into pretty much any backpack out there, even my kid's Disney backpack. And yes, it is light enough for her to lug around all day in said Disney backpack. I mean, what's the point of having kids if you can't put them to work? Now, the Matebook X Pro 2024 sports a magnesium alloy frame, and of course it gives off some serious MacBook vibes. But that is just at a quick glance. There are actually plenty of differences, starting with the soft touch surfaces, both here on the interior and also the exterior, the lid and that bottom end. So very much unlike the hard, cold finish of that MacBook, the Matebook actually feels nice to hold and to use and to stroke, if you're into stroking laptops. That velvety interior certainly feels very nice against your palms. You got a small selection of different colours with the Matebook X Pro 2024. Basically here in blighty black, white, or this here blue model, which I think looks rather smart and sleek. And the matte finish on that lid means it doesn't get too smudgy when you are lugging it about the place as well. Not too many grimy, greasy fingerprint shenanigans. As for the port situation, well, sadly, rather slim pickings there, just like a MacBook. Got a pair of Thunderbolt ports here on the left edge, and just a regular bit of USB-C over on the right, and that's your whack. No full-sized USB-A ports, of course, because of the skinniness of this laptop. Certainly no HDMI port, as you hopefully expect, but of course you can use those Thunderbolt ports to output to another display if you want to, and there's no memory card slot on here either, which is a bit of a miss. Now, when you want to actually use the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024, just lift that lid and literally a second or so later, you are into your desktops courtesy of that super swift facial recognition. But if for whatever reason your face is having a very bad day, well, no worries, you've also got a fingerprint sensor built into that power button as backup, and again, this will get you right into your desktops in a jiffy. Now, another highlight of the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024, and there are quite a few, is that 14.2-inch display. Now, this is a flexible, scratch-resistant OLED display, now thinner and lighter than the previous Matebook X Pro model. Got a 93% screen-to-body ratio thanks to the reasonably skinny bezels surrounding that display. And it's a 3:2 aspect ratio as well, well designed for creative tasks, web browsing. Can get a good bit of multitasking with two apps side by side, all that kind of shenanigans. It's not quite as well suited to gaming or, of course, kicking back with a good bit of Netflix or whatever. If you're watching some cinematic fare, you get pretty big letterboxing. Some nice thick chunky black bits above and below the actual action. But hey, those movies will look absolutely lush thanks to the 3.1K resolution, 3120 by 2080 pixels. So video, photos, everything looks pin sharp and absolutely stunning. Reasonably poppy color reproduction. You got full support for the Adobe RGB, sRGB and P3 gamut, so good news if you are editing some photos or video. And if you boost the brightness to the maximum levels, you'll probably get a migraine after about 5 minutes because it is eye-searingly bright. And not content to simply leave it at that, Huawei has also slapped on a 5-layer coating to help significantly reduce reflections. So I've got the brightness scaled all the way down, as you can see there. I'm now aiming the display at my fiercely, ferociously bright spotlight, which I've got just behind me. And as you can see there, you can barely even see that light reflected in that shiny panel. And of course, if you boost up the brightness, you've got absolutely no chance. It actually seems to be on a par with that Gorilla Glass Armor display that Samsung slapped on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. So yeah, boner time. And yes, it is a touchscreen as well, so you can poke and prod that display as merrily as you like. Although Huawei has somehow managed to cram the biggest possible touchpad into that palm rest, literally stretching all the way down to that bottom edge. And for laptop touchpad, it's actually not CAC. You've got full multi-touch gesture support, all the usual shenanigans. It's reasonably responsive. My only real complaint is occasionally a little bit of my palm will just accidentally brush against that bottom edge and load up something that I didn't mean to load up or whatever. But back on the media chops, the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024 also boasts larger speaker chambers than the previous model, 6 speakers in total.
So I watched this one with my wife from the sunny state of Goa in Western India, drinking coconut rum. Oh, God. Sorry, I can't even think about coconut rum without bringing up a bit of breakfast.
So as you can hopefully hear there, max out that volume. The audio's pretty punchy, certainly more than loud enough to clearly hear what is going on, even if you're in quite a noisy household. I'm pretty happy with the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024's keyboard as well, which practically stretches the full width of that chassis, just leaving a wee bit of space either side for those speaker grills. No real surprises with the design or anything, it's your typical chiclet style laptop keyboard. Those keys are a good size, they're reasonably well spaced. Certainly had absolutely no issues touch typing on this thing at my full rate. A couple of fairly standard laptop keyboard complaints like the single row enter key, which always gets on my tits. Got a couple of stages of backlighting, which is more than good enough for tackling the evening workload, or of course whatever you happen to be up to at 3 AM. It's a pretty firm board overall and reasonable travel as well, again considering how ridiculously skinny this thing is. Now squirreled away in the reasonably skinny top bezel of the Matebook X Pro 2024, you'll find yourself a full HD webcam with, as you can see there, a dinky little LED light just to indicate that it is in action when it's being used by any app. Now you do actually have a physical privacy switch over here on the right edge as well, so you can just give that a quick flick at any point and that will completely disable the camera just in case you want a bit of privacy, just in case you want to do stuff with absolutely zero risk of anyone seeing, whatever that might be. And because the Intel processor which runs the show here on the Matebook X Pro 2024 has a built-in NPU, that means you've also got various AI-powered camera features, including automatic framing, which can just make sure that you are the center of attention. As you can see there, just zooming in on my gorgeous baldy bonce. There's also an eye contact tool, which doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do, which is make it look like you're actually paying attention to the screen when you're staring off at your Kindle or cat or whatever. It just does weird looking things to your eyes, makes it look like you're an anime character or something. But then you do have background effects which can blur out everything behind you to varying degrees of success. Occasionally it goes a bit wonky, as you can see there. The Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024 also boasts a quad mic setup, so even if you're sat quite far back from this laptop, it'll clearly pick up on your vocals, and it does an alright job of sort of drowning out any background shindiggery that's going on, trying to drown you out a bit. Now, when faced with a laptop this dinky, you'll be forgiven for thinking it's probably about as powerful as a butterfly's bowel movement. But actually, performance comes courtesy of one of the fresh new Intel Core Ultra 9 chipsets, and that maxes out at 40 watt TDP. On top of that, you got Huawei's Super Turbo Resource Management. So this laptop basically powers up instantly, it's ready to use within seconds. Those apps load up instantly as well. You can happily multitask with loads of different apps at the same time and see absolutely no slowdown whatsoever. And while there's no dedicated GPU on here, the graphics are handled by a bit of Intel Arc action. The Matebook X Pro 2024 can happily handle photo editing, video editing, and other creative tasks. So in the likes of DaVinci Resolve, for instance, the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024 can export a 1-minute YouTube Shorts and TikTok video in roughly 25 to 30 seconds. And that, by the way, is running on battery power with a whole bunch of other apps, including Chrome and all kinds of stuff running in the background. And while the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024 certainly isn't built for gaming, that absolutely does not mean you can't get some gaming on the go if you fancy it. When it's plugged in and slapped on that performance mode, the likes of Forza Horizon runs at a pretty stable frame rate around 50 FPS, and that's on the high graphics settings. So again, it's frankly ludicrous performance given the ridiculously dinky wee size of this thing. And if you want to do a good bit of video editing, bit of gaming on the go, whatever, where you've got a dual shark fin fan setup, and these have actually increased in size over the previous model with a fresh intake design and a literally hot bit of quad vent action. You've also got a vapor chamber packed in there. And I've got to say that even when this thing is under extreme pressure, those fans, you'll barely hear them. They all whisper quiet. So here we have Forza running in benchmark mode. Those fans are going about as fast as they possibly ever will. And as you can hear, or can't hear, those fans are like barely audible. It does get a wee bit warm here on the bottom end, just towards the back edge there, but nothing too troublesome. Certainly nothing that's going to toast your marshmallows. Oh, and by the way, yeah, the Matebook X Pro 2024 did just once again achieve a score almost 50 frames per second on the high graphics mode. This time just running on battery again. Excellent stuff. As for the battery life, well, you've got a 70 watt-hour cell stuffed inside of this latest, freshest 2024 Matebook X Pro. And so far I've found that if this laptop is in performance mode, I tend to get around 5 hours of mixed use on a full charge before it dies a death. But thankfully, if you slap it into the balanced mode instead, well, then you tend to get closer to around sort of 7 to 8 hours of use, depending on what you're up to, obviously. But if you're just kicking back, watching some video, messing around in Chrome or whatever, yeah, you'll basically get a full working day out of a single charge. However, if you are commuting into the office for the day, I'd certainly take the charger just in case it's not quite dependable enough. The good news is if you are starting to run dry, where you've got 90 watt super turbo charge support here, so that battery powers back up in a jiffy. Oh, and you've got 2 terabytes of storage stuffed in there as well, so a good amount of space for all your various files, apps and other shenanigans. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a tasty wee nutshell is the fresh new Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024, a commuter's wet dream. Given the size of this thing, it's absolutely incredible just how much it can do. So certainly if you're after a lightweight laptop that's easy to lug around but doesn't skimp on power and performance, well, job done. And that's what I reckon of the Huawei Matebook X Pro 2024. It'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. As I say, about £2,000 of your fine British money will bag you one of these lovely blue rectangles. Please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a really wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.